guys? It's Phil the MMA Dude back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 7070, here with my always brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek. Fight Geek, how you doing today, bro?
Doing excellent, man. Happy to be back here talking fights with you. Episode 70. Let's do it.
We're moving along. Already at episode 70, I can't believe it. So there's a lot to discuss today, folks. Here's a quick breakdown of what we've got on tap. First and foremost, we start off with my opening question for Fight Geek. After that, we're going to do a UFC Vegas4 recap and review, a card that I was shockingly, positively impressed with. Much better than I thought it would be. After that, we're going to go over some really quick news and headlines. And then my favorite section, listener questions and more. So Fight Geek, let me start off the episode with this question for you, and it's a simple question. It's a yes or no question.
Okay.
Will Dustin Poirier ever become the UFC lightweight champion of the world?
You would ask that question, huh?
Well, is that a bad question to ask?
I don't believe he will. Personally, I just think that there's a couple bad matchups for him at the top. But that does not mean that he's not elite and that he may not, get another title shot or earn another title shot, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. But I don't see an undisputed title win for him personally. But that seems like a disrespectful to kick off the show with. Because
really?
Yeah, because, the guy's coming off a great victory over another elite fighter in an unbelievable weight class, and we're talking about what he can't do.
Okay,
what about what he can do?
Yeah, absolutely. But okay, I hear that. In my defense, now what I would normally be asking after this type of win is, what is the ceiling for this fighter? Isn't that exactly what I'm asking?
I guess it is. Obviously, his ceiling is to contend for another title. Do I see him beating Khabib? No, I don't.
But no, I know. But what if Khabib retires?
I would actually see him having a hard time in a Justin Gaethje rematch, and we'll get into this in a few minutes. But at this point, Dustin Poirier has been in a couple wars. He has been in there. He's been chewed up. He's lasted. He's got a bunch of miles on him. I know he's only 31, but he's got 32 pro fights, and a lot of them recently have been dog fights where he's really had to put it on the line. So. I think that's got to catch up with him at some point. So I think there's a couple bad matchups for him at the top right now, but I certainly think a fight like Tony Ferguson makes a lot of sense next.
Yeah, I actually completely agree with just about, or really not just about, all of that. I think that Ferguson's the fight to make next. I think that he will absolutely get another title shot. So I think he's going to be in another title fight, for the record.
Well, I could see the winner of Tony Dustin getting the next shot, because I think we're probably going to see Conor at 170. I just have a feeling if we do see him back. So that leaves 155 with a clear number one contender match, which is now Poirier versus Tony. So in either of those guys winning that fight, is deserving of that next shot for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And okay, so since you said that I started off the show with Dustin Poirier negativity, which was not my intent, let me say something positive and ask you a question. So Dustin Poirier, it has now been widely argued, has the strongest strength of schedule resume in the lightweight division, and what I mean by that specifically is wins over top-level lightweights. Do you agree?
No doubt. If you look at his resume at 145, Dustin Poirier arguably has the best resume on the UFC roster today.
And you're talking strength of schedule, obviously, correct?
Oh, well, yeah, obviously. Yeah, he's obviously not got the peaks of a Conor McGregor, but if you look start to finish and the quantity of his great victories over the two most competitive weight classes in the world, I don't know who you could say has a better strength of schedule throughout their career ever.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to, by the way, I have a lot of trouble disagreeing with that. I agree with you. Because just to run through some of those names real fast. Max Holloway twice, once at 145, once at 155. We've also got Carlos Diego Ferreira, which was in 2015, but man, that one aged well. Yancy Medeiros, Jim Miller. We've got Anthony Pettis, Justin Gaethje, Eddie Alvarez. And of course, Dan Hooker.
Well,
Pretty
and I
dang
think
impressive.
what you can also look at is basically his losses. So he's 26-6, which is an unbelievable win percentage over that much quantity. His losses are a very close fight of the year type fight versus the Korean Zombie. Unbelievable fight that he was in all the way through.
Yep.
Conor McGregor, who obviously one of the best fighters we've ever seen, at his absolute peak beat him. So, I mean, we're not talking about Dustin Poirier having a lot of bad blemishes here. I think he has obviously the Michael Johnson blemish where he decided to exchange recklessly, got caught. That was what preceded his most recent run, and obviously the Khabib fight's a little bit of a stain. But other than that, I mean, the guy's 26-4. I mean, that's a very, very solid career. He's only 31, probably got at least 4 or 5 more fights in him. So he really reminds me, his career arc reminds me of Michael Bisping a lot.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's very fair. I would almost argue that Poirier has been more consistent than Bisping was.
Well, he has been more consistent than Bisping, but, Bisping ended up, I think, 31-9. That's probably right about where Poirier will end up. They both kind of started out with a lot of shine on them and then kind of had their ups and downs. Obviously, both, had a big setbacks, with the knockouts to Henderson and then to McGregor, title losses, yada, yada. So, yeah, I just see him as kind of evolving into that type of a career arc.
Yeah, and just because we're on such a related topic, I'm going to ask a quick listener question from Zan Bando at ZanBando99. He's the man, good friend of mine. He says, what's next for Poirier? I feel that Conor McGregor makes the most sense because both are coming off wins, #AskSplitPod. So what are your thoughts on that? I know you just mentioned Tony.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I really think the fight to make here is Dustin Poirier versus Tony. I mean, rankings-wise, that is the number one contender fight. Conor beat Cowboy, who at this point is a fringe top 15 guy.
Sure.
So, that's not really deserving, even though obviously he would get that shot. And I personally believe that if Conor comes back, he's going to fight at 170 in a Jorge Masvidal type fight.
Yeah. Okay. Absolutely. I think it's very fair. And last thing I want to say.
Hold on. One sleeper, though.
Yeah.
What about Poirier versus Colby Covington? I do think that's on the table someday at 170.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting that Colby called Dustin out, who's at a lower weight class. I don't think that was really like a cool move. You usually don't.
No, but they have all that ATT drama, so there's a lot of backstory. They're just two guys that probably want to get at each other. I'm sure Colby feels like Dustin had something to do with him getting kicked out of the gym. It was clear that Dustin wasn't cool being a teammate of Colby's. So, I mean, there's a backstory. I know there's a couple important fights for Dustin right now, but I just mean down the road, I could definitely see that being an interesting fight.
And I actually completely agree. Who would you have in that matchup?
Well, I mean, I would have to lean towards Colby at this point, just based on the fact that, I mean, Poirier has so many miles. He would be somewhat, an unknown at 170, and he's 5'9", which Poirier would be really short for that weight class. I mean, I guess Conor's similar size, but, I just think that Poirier would have a little bit of problem with that matchup. But with that said, I do think that it would be competitive. But if Colby just keeps pushing him up against the fence and taking him down, I think that could be a problem.
Absolutely. And then last question here, and then we'll move on to the rest of the card, I promise. So at the end of the second round, by the way, we'll get into this later. What an amazing masterpiece fight Poirier versus Hooker was, obviously.
Absolutely. Both guys just emptied the tanks. It was amazing.
Yeah, it was truly amazing. At the end of the second round, Hooker nearly finishes Poirier. I mean, literally at the very end of the second round. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, the exchange.
Yep.
And Poirier falls to his knees. Once the bell's rung, once the bell's rung, he falls to his knees. And then the fact that he not only survives that moment, but then goes on to completely turn around the fight. He's down 2-0 at that point, and then he goes on to win 3-2, is making me think that he, mentally speaking, is the strongest fighter in the UFC. I would like to know if you agree, and if you disagree, who is mentally stronger than him?
Yeah, I mean, I think that is the superpower of Dustin Poirier. You know, he is extremely mentally tough. You know, I think it really started in that Justin Gaethje fight when he outlasted Gaethje in an unbelievable war.
Oh yeah.
And he kind of found that next level to dig, and he's been doing that consistently since then. So yeah, I definitely think that you could say that Dustin Poirier has as much fighting will and fortitude as anyone in the UFC, 100%.
Absolutely. Okay, are we ready to move on to going over the rest of the card real fast?
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, so first fight, we can be fast. Yusuf Zalal defeats Jordan Griffin via unanimous decision. I honestly didn't think, too much of this fight. I mean, the card actually, I think, was better than I expected, but I didn't think too much of this.
This was an okay back and forth fight to get things started off, and Zalal ended up, getting the victory, and he looked decent. I think he's 3-0 now, so definitely a guy to watch.
Yeah, I believe he's 3-0 in the UFC, 9-2 overall. Exactly, totally agree. Moving on, Kay Hansen defeats Jin Yu Frey via triangle armbar at 226
This was one of the highlights of the night for me.
Oh yeah. What did you? So what do you make of Kay Hansen?
Yeah, I mean, they made a lot of her being, the Rousey revolution, and that she grew up watching Ronda Rousey. And what was really ironic is the way she snatched up that arm and found that finish was so Rousey-esque. I mean, I really couldn't have been more impressed. She was clearly in there with a much more experienced fighter. She had some adversity on the feet early, but when she found a way to get to a fight where she wanted it, she snapped. I mean, that transition to that armbar was unbelievable. I mean, for such a young player, finishing instinct and the technical acumen to snatch that up, very, very impressive stuff in my opinion.
Yep, and I'll give you the credit here. I believe that you picked Hansen to win, and I believe I picked Jin Yu Frey to win, so I will give you that one. Moving on to the one that I got right and you got wrong. See how I did that? Tanner Boser defeats Felipe Lins via TKO punches, 2 minutes and 41 seconds of round number one.
This was a good one, too, because I felt like Lins was winning this fight all the way up until he wasn't, and Boser just exploded out of nowhere. Very accurate finish, explosive finish. That was pretty impressive.
Yeah, very impressive. And what I really liked about this fight was, what I really liked about this, the storyline and how it played out was afterwards, Tanner had a name in mind immediately. He did it right. And he said, if Maurice Green wins his fight, let's go. We exchanged words in the hotel after he had a few beers a few nights ago, kind of throwing Maurice under the bus. Do you think that's the next fight to make since Maurice Green won his fight? Because I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. But Maurice Green, he may be trying to look up a little bit. So we'll see if he wants to take that fight. It's obviously a dangerous one, but Green seems to be pretty game. And we'll get to his fight soon enough. But, man, that was a shocking one also.
Well said. Okay, moving on. This was talk about shock. Kama Worthy submits Luis Pena, Violent Bob Ross, 2 minutes and 53 seconds into round number 3. What did you make?
It was a good back and forth fight. I was impressed with both guys, actually. I thought Pena had his moments and, obviously got the fight to the ground in a few spots. And I thought that fight arguably could have gone to Pena. So it was a good fight. Obviously very
Well, he got submitted,
finish.
Though.
No, I know he did. But it was
I see what you're saying before
until that point, It was a back and forth fight where it could have been 1-1. I'm not saying it was, but it could have been. It wasn't like decisive action one way or the other. So
no, I agree.
Out of nowhere, big submission victory from Worthy. Again, I keep saying it, but another one to watch. These Corona cards are really uncovering some of that, 15 to 30 ranked fighters that kind of get lost in the shuffle. They're really being highlighted during this time.
Oh man, you have got to copyright Corona cards. That's been like everyone's
That's
like
the theme.
Yeah, no, and you started that, and everyone's like talking about Corona cards and giving you shout outs on that. I think you need to start making some T-shirts and cash in on that.
Hashtag Corona cards.
Yes, exactly right. Okay, so then let me ask you this question: what would you like to see next for both Kama Worthy and then frankly Luis Pena? I don't know specifically where Pena goes from here. I think I've always had a lot of questions about him, and
so this one was at 155, correct?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Kama Worthy versus Ally Akinta. Let's see that.
Oh, is that too big of a step up for Kama?
Well, he's on some big winning streak, and he's just had a couple, highlight reel finishes. Ally Akinta's sliding way the wrong way, so I think it'd be an opportunity for him to get a victory, but it also give Worthy an opportunity to get a name.
I like that fight. Let me just play devil's advocate. What do you think of Kama versus Gregor Gillespie?
Yeah, I could see that for sure. That's probably more attainable. But how about Gregor Gillespie versus Ally Akinta?
That's a great one also. That's another great one.
Yeah, you can't really go wrong. What about Violent Bob Ross? What do you got for him next?
That's to me that's the $1 million question here, because again, so I was going to say quickly, I like Violent Bob Ross. I've always liked him, but I've never quite trusted him, if that makes sense, because he's let me down in a few strange moments.
I'm right there with you, and he was even in a position where I think he had full back control and still wasn't able to find a finish. I've mentioned this multiple times.
It's like he chokes or something.
Dominant positions and has no idea how to choke a guy out. He doesn't even set up the choke. So I'm always very confused by him just getting to someone's back and then really not being able to threaten from there. So he just rides out control time. How about this one just for fun? Alexander Hernandez versus Pena.
Oh, I love it. Oh, make it tomorrow. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool.
I love it. Okay, all right, moving on. This was a great one. Julian Erosa defeats Sean Woodson via Darce choke. Yeah.
Juicy J came to fight. I mean, he was marching down Woodson the whole time. Obviously, Woodson had, what was his reach advantage? Was it like 8 inches or something crazy? He was peppering the jab. That guy has some weird proportions, man. His legs are so thin, and Erosa kept chipping away at the legs and just kept marching forward. Erosa's really underrated skill-wise. Obviously he's a good striker, but his propensity to get in brawls and just take a lot of damage has really not served him well. So it looked like he was on the way to doing the same thing that he's done in the past when he got dropped, but unbelievable turn of events to get that Darce choke. It was a great fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally just wish it wasn't a catchweight. It was a catchweight at 150, and as Dana has said many times, he says he hates catchweight fights and recently said they mean absolutely nothing. So
came in on no note at all versus one of the scariest prospects they got right now. Sean Woodson's a difficult guy to prepare for.
Oh, for sure. Woodson was, I believe, undefeated, right?
Yeah, he was undefeated, and he was making people look real bad in the last few. And he was making Erosa bad in spots, but Erosa just marched him down, a la Tony Ferguson, and just kept coming until he couldn't take it anymore. So yeah, big win for Erosa. Julian Erosa versus Luis Pena while we're on it. Something like that works for me at 155.
Ooh, I like that one as well. There's so many potential fire matchups.
Right? So many good matchups. Even guys coming off losses that are, interesting matchups.
Absolutely. Okay, moving on. This was impressive. Takashi Sato defeats Jason Witt via TKO ground and pound 48 seconds into the first round. Off
the laser right or straight left, I remember.
I believe so. I believe he caught him. Yeah,
and he's working with Henry Hooft now, right, as a striking coach.
I believe so. That sounds. So
yeah, I was super impressed with Sato. Big, strong guy, accurate striker, very accurate guy. So yeah, it was a good performance. Another fun fight on a good night of fights.
Yeah, does anything jump out to you as what's next for Takashi Sato, or not necessarily yet? It's a little too soon.
That was at 170, right?
Or that was at 170. It was at 170.
Okay, 170. I mean, again, I could just pull names out. Let's say Mike Perry. Why not? We'll get there, but that makes sense.
Ooh, that would be that sounds tough for Sato, to be honest.
Well, Mike Perry gets hit a lot, and Sato is very accurate and hits hard, though.
Yeah, very hard to disagree with that. I also like Sato versus, I don't know what Showtime Pettis is doing. I mean, he's certainly ranked as
what about someone like Vicente Luque?
Yeah, I would favor Luque in that matchup, but absolutely.
Are we looking for someone who will favor him? How about Brian Barberena, Kashi Sato?
Okay, yeah, we could do. Yeah, I mean,
I'll just name the whole roster for him. All right, let's keep it moving.
Okay. Brendan Allen defeats Kyle Daukaus via unanimous
Daukaus.
Daukaus. Okay, I'm sorry, Daukaus.
And this was a barn. Also, this fight was crazy. The exchanges, guys were beating each other up. Brendan Allen has just been so to me, super strong. I mean, great stumbles, good grappler, ground and pound is super heavy. Daukaus was impressive with kind of, debuting in the UFC undefeated, was awkward moments and threatened in spots. So, I mean, I like that fight a lot. Very, very underrated fight on the card. I think Brendan Allen has potential to be a contender.
Yeah, and this might be a little bit of a. I'm just curious if you had this thought. Kyle Daukaus, who, or how do you say it? Did I mispronounce it again?
No, I think you're doing.
Okay, yeah. So he was undefeated going into this. He was 9-0, and a lot of this fight weirdly reminded me of is it Max Worskopf? Kyle reminded me of Max. For some reason, it reminded me a lot of that performance. But Kyle obviously dug in.
Than that, though.
Kyle obviously dug in deeper, but I saw a lot of similarities because Kyle was getting his ass beat, but he didn't quit for one moment. Not a moment.
That's true, and I could definitely see what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, Kyle Daukaus showed quite a bit of toughness, and then obviously, like I said, found some ways to threaten in certain spots.
Absolutely. I think that my point is I think that Kyle has a bright future despite this loss, but we'll see.
For sure. I think Brendan Allen has a bright future. Who do you see him fighting next?
It's a good question. So, he welterweight, oh man, my thoughts would be Antonio Carlos Jr., Brad Tavares.
Yeah, I could see that. That makes sense. Brad Tavares is a good one, or a Marvin Vettori.
Yeah, so I'm seeing Marvin Vettori. My first thoughts were just, is Marvin just gonna sleep him?
I mean, I don't know. This kid, Brendan Allen's a great grappler, and he's a big, strong kid.
Absolutely is.
Vettori hasn't been sleeping that many people. I mean, he had a good TKO last time, but I think that's a super close matchup.
Yeah, no, the more I think about it, honestly, the more I like that one. Okay, moving on to Maurice Green defeating John Vellante via third-round submission, modified choke from the bottom.
Beer belly Vellante, man. I couldn't even recognize that guy. That was embarrassing.
That was embarrassing. Can I say something that's like super armchair quarterback where I feel like I'm 500 pounds eating chips, being a keyboard warrior? But so look, I'm no BJJ expert, but I've been practicing, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu for a few years now, and that submission is not something that John should have tapped to, in my opinion. Now maybe I'm
but
wrong.
Also that submission in my opinion, cannot be pulled off unless you have super long arms like Maurice Green. I mean, that was kind of like a perfect storm there because you need long enough arms to wrap that up and close off the airway. And from the bottom, not many guys are going to have that kind of length on their arms. So it was really kind of, a unique situation that Maurice Green just happened to be that guy because his arms are so long.
Yeah.
But I agree that there was a lot of fatigue that went into that tap out, I would say.
Yeah, it was a very odd submission to watch because it really didn't look all that tight. I mean, it really maybe I'm wrong. Of course, I wasn't there. I'm not John, but it did not look tight.
Well, he definitely locked it in on the other side and started to move into it. So, I mean.
Okay. I mean, even the commentators were saying, "What happened? What's going on?"
Mr. Jiu-Jitsu practice chokes can be deceiving sometimes.
No, hey, that's very true. I know that from experience. So that's very true. That's a great point. Okay, so what would you like for Maurice Green? I know that we were obviously discussing Tanner Bozer's call.
I think that Tanner Bozer is a no-brainer.
Okay. You were saying that you think Maurice might be looking for something better, though. Is that, do you have a second fight in mind for, maybe
Did he? I mean, I know Andre Arlovsky's always making the rounds versus like the up and coming heavyweights. Have they fought yet? Because that always makes sense. Just Andre versus anyone with up and coming name.
So I don't believe they fought, but most of all, what I know is that Arlovsky's no longer ranked. So I'm just wondering if that even, does that do more than say fighting a Sergey Pavlovich or a Shamil Abdurakhimov?
I would say Arlovsky still carries more name value than both of them.
That's fair. I mean, he's a former champion, so I certainly hear what you're saying there. Okay, so moving on to the co-main event. Credit to you, Fight Geek. Look, you got this right. I got this very wrong. I was such a fool picking Mickey Gall in hindsight. You picked Mike Perry very, very wisely.
Yeah, but I didn't pick it by the correct method. That's for sure.
I mean, these are all coin tosses. Anyone who's a real MMA fan knows that you can't actually.
What's insane is that Mike Perry fought arguably his most composed, measured fight to date with no corner. Obviously he was not sharp. He was swinging and missing. You could tell he was missing the technical coach. But as far as like going out there, being in shape, conserving his energy, winning the grappling exchanges, winning the positions. I mean, Mike Perry won that fight. So hats off to Mike Perry. That was super impressive. Even I didn't see him doing it like that.
Oh, 100%. And look, I mean, Latore Gonzalez, we can hate on her, but she's 1-0 in UFC fights as a coach.
Well, there's a lot of power in just getting someone to rub your back with some ice and tell you it's going to be okay and good job. I mean, it's the power of positive thought, I can dig it.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just waiting for LGFC, Latore Gonzalez Fight Club, to open so I can sign up because I want in. So
I mean, do you agree with me? Was that the most measured you'd seen Mike Perry?
Yeah, I think that's probably a very fair statement. I mean, he dominated Gall. He humiliated Mickey Gall.
Was that because he just was not physically threatened by Gall in any way? He just basically was in there dictating the terms, marching him down. Gall was on the back foot from the beginning. I think Perry was just so comfortable that on his worst day he can still probably beat Mickey Gall at this point.
Oh yeah, well I think what I was most impressed with, and to give you credit, you kind of shadowed this a little bit last week in your predictions. You were saying Mike Perry's ground game is very underrated, and that proved to be very correct because Perry was toying with Gall on the ground and was never in trouble.
Well, the strength advantage for Mike Perry at 170 is going to be something he's probably going to be able to lean on in most matchups. He's just so naturally explosive and strong. I mean, he gets in a bad position on the ground. He just stands up and just moves ass shakes out of it. You don't see many guys do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So on that note, Mike Perry, despite having snapped a very bad losing streak, this was a huge win. He's very popular with fans. Who would you like to see him fight next? I'm seeing a lot of people, a surprising amount of people, saying Nate Diaz. Just stop, everyone, stop.
Called out Nate Diaz. That fight's not happening. I mean, I know I've mentioned a couple different fights for Mike Perry previously, but there's two names that come to mind for me. Robbie Lawler in a main event makes all the sense in the world. A 5-round main event, Robbie Lawler, Mike Perry. Not a lot of title implications there, but two fan favorites who are going to slug it out. That's like kind of a dream matchup. Or if you want to be more, jockeying for rankings, how about Nico Price versus Mike Perry?
I love both of those fights a lot.
Yeah, so do I. Both of those are absolute grand slams in my opinion. But, I mean, at this point, I kind of want to see Nico Price and Mike Perry can be a 3-rounder, but if Robbie goes versus Mike, it needs to be 5. It needs to be a main event.
Yeah, those are both great fights. I'm almost more into the Lawler fight, but Nico versus him is great too.
I think he'd have more problems with Nico than Robbie Lawler right now.
Yeah, I just don't like that I'm agreeing with you. I don't like that. So
pick another name then.
Okay. All right, moving along. Oh, really quick. What's next for Mickey Gall? Is there? Can I just say I think Mickey Gall's. I mean, I've never liked him, but he's got to be in my top 3 most disliked fighters. Let's think about it.
He's just another one of these casualties of the UFC.
No, but he's a bully. He's a bully. He's a jerk. and he's a bad fighter. So it's like,
I mean, he just got moved too fast, and then he's kind of taken too long off in between fights. He's got
called out Northcutt when he was a
no
welterweight.
rhythm,
Northcutt's a lightweight. I mean, he's a bully.
Yeah, he's misplayed his cards because I was actually a fan of his early, but I was not impressed this fight. He just really had a hard time establishing anything. You know what I mean? So.
Oh yeah, I thought he looked horrendous. I was, and look, I'll own it, guys. I picked Gall to win, and
He didn't
I'm
get
embarrassed.
knocked out, so at least he's still durable. He's still lasting in there. He was able to make it to the bell, which is something.
Do you think he should? I personally think that he has absolutely no business being in as elite of a promotion as Ultimate Fighting Championship, and it's time for him to go. Is that too harsh? I think it's time. Get Mickey out of there. Get Mickey out.
Value and the fact that Dana signed him, I don't see that happening. But
you don't see him getting cut. Everyone's writing his.
Mickey Gall, no, I don't see Mickey Gall getting cut. No,
that'd be a shame.
They have too much invested in him. Put someone in there like Mickey Gall versus James Vick or something like that.
No, I don't want him to get an easy fight. I want to throw him to the wolves and finish him for good.
Well, he's 6-3. And he fights once every year and a half or so. So I don't think you have too much to worry about. He could be on the chopping block. I just don't see with the interest that UFC has in him and the money they put into him that would be the decision. Yeah, what is he? He's like 25.
Yeah, he's young. I'd say give him the fight I'd like to see him in is either Vicente Luque, Jeff Neal. Or Stephen Thompson, and if he loses, he's got to get cut. If he loses, he's got to get cut.
All right, let's touch on the main event again, and then keep it moving.
Yeah, main event: Poirier versus Hooker. Again, I thought this was absolutely one of the greatest fights of the year. People saying that it was the greatest fight of the year over J.J. Zhang, though, are insane. I'm sorry, that's literally crazy.
I mean, here's what I'm gonna say. In my opinion, the action within the 5 rounds was actually better than JJ versus Zhang.
What?
But the fact that JJ was a former champion and Zhang is a champion, and it wasn't just the main event, but it was a title fight with 2 known entities at the championship level, still gives that fight the edge and fight of the year. But no doubt the best action of the year was Hooker versus Poirier, in my opinion. They traded back and forth. You saw grappling exchanges. You saw, what didn't you see in that fight? I mean, the fact that Hooker was up 2 rounds to nothing, and he was really marching Poirier down and putting him on his back foot. He was in control. I was concerned for Poirier. And then for Poirier,
you were concerned. I scored the friggin' fight wrong and got annihilated.
I scored the first 2 rounds for Hooker.
Definitely.
The night of, and I was like, man, I almost didn't want to publicly put my score out because I was like, is this really happening? And then, for him, and then the 3rd round to actually be so close, and for Hooker to actually have a small case of winning that round until you go back and really decipher that action. I think that, obviously Dustin was landing the heavier shots. Maybe the volume was more in Hooker's favor early on, but those thudding hooks kept backing him off, and they were landing. And then obviously the championship experience of Poirier took over in the 4th and 5th.
Oh, definitely.
In Hooker, this was the same thing I was mentioning about the Barboza fight is, his defense is really not that great for as tough as he is, and he just ends up taking a beating. I haven't looked at the stats, but I think he ate like 100 plus strikes in the last 3 rounds alone, right?
Oh yeah, he ate a ton. Absolutely.
And you're not going to win a title if you're eating 40 to 50 shots per round in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds. It's just not how it works.
Although it's worth saying, Poirier not only did he take a ton of damage, he was literally as close as I've maybe ever seen someone who ends up winning, one of the top ones from, he was almost out at the end of the 2nd round.
Yeah,
I thought
it
he was
really
knocked
reminded me of
unconscious.
Cody versus TJ1 where TJ gets flash knocked down, and you can clearly see that he's like rocked at the end of the 1st round, which that's even more credit to Dustin to be able to go back to his corner, sit down, get it together, come back out, and then, even take some punishment in that third round and still turn the tide, because that wasn't even the end of his adversity.
Not at all. Not at all. And really quickly, and we're about to move on from the fight, obviously, as anyone who's listening to this knows, on the night, and I definitely had a few, so let's just get that out there. I'll be honest. No excuses, of course. I did score it 3-2 for Hooker. It was all about that third round. Obviously, Dustin won 4 and 5. Obviously, Hooker won 1 and 2. And it came down to that third. Now, again, I take responsibility for that. Whatever. I scored it wrong. Saw it the next day. I did ultimately give the third round to Poirier. I think he did more damage. But do you think that there's anything to be said for how the announcers, the commentators, I should say, comment on the fight, and do you think they lead to any kind of bias? And the reason I say that is Michael Bisping, if you go and rewatch the fight, Michael Bisping cannot stop talking about how much Dan Hooker is winning the third round throughout the round. That's all he's talking about. All Bisping's saying is Hooker's winning the round. Poirier's about to go down 3-0. And he just says it over and over again. So I think that may have, obviously.
So are you looking at it? Looking for an excuse? Were you intoxicated by the analysis of Michael Bisping?
I'm just saying Hooker was on top for the majority of the round. Yes, Poirier earned more damage. I give Poirier the round. My final decision is definitely Poirier gets the round, and you know me, I would never back down. If I thought Hooker won the round, trust me, guys, I would say it. But no, it was Poirier. But do you think? But
it was by the slimmest of margins.
It was by the slimmest of margins. And do you?
For sure. And Poirier edged that out. I mean, he a couple exchanges there at the end, a couple heavy exchanges is really what edged that out, because, like you said, he was losing some of that round. So.
Oh, yeah. He was losing more than some of it. I mean, he was losing almost half of it.
I know. I'm trying to go back off the top of my head. But, yeah, I think for about 3 minutes there, Poirier was being controlled in a bad spot. But, like I said, when they were getting up and exchanging, it just seemed like that, much like the Max Holloway fight where they were exchanging, Poirier was still landing the heavier, thudding shots that were really taking their toll on Hooker, even though he just continued to march forward.
Absolutely. And then this is my last kind of related question there. So obviously Bisping kept talking about how he thought that Poirier was losing the round. And then the other two commentators, who I believe were Dominic Cruz and John Anik, right?
Is anybody else sick of Dominic Cruz and Michael Bisping?
Listen, I'm so sick of Dominic Cruz, and I just want him gone. I'm going to be honest, man. I can't stand him anymore.
He took a big turn.
I can't stand him. He's such a condescending jerk.
I don't disagree with you there. But I think he's been a condescending jerk the whole time, and for some reason he's gotten a pass. But now,
the pass is over when he accused Keith Peterson. The only reason he lost is because Keith Peterson was intoxicated and reeked of cigarettes. Okay, loser. Get out of here.
All right.
Okay. I've upset enough Dominic Cruz fans that are turning this off. Sorry, guys. Okay, so are we? We're gonna take a really quick break, and then we're gonna come back with listener questions and more, and maybe cover a little bit of quick UFC news. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude, letting you know that this episode of the Split Decision Podcast is brought to you by TotalAggressionClothing.com. Visit www.TotalAggressionClothing.com and use the promo code 46210 to receive a special Split Podcast discount on all Total Aggression hats, shirts, hoodies, and more. Again, that's www.TotalAggressionClothing.com with promo code 46210. Hey guys, it's Phil the MMA Dude, back with the Split Decision Podcast, episode number 70, here with my brilliant co-host, the Fight Geek, and it is now time for my favorite section, Listener Questions!
All right, let's get to them. I got one queued up from Instagram, from Fighting With Myself Pod.
Fighting With Myself Pod, what
up? Is it time for Mike Perry to get a proper camp, or should he continue to be a nomad bouncing from camp to camp? If the former, where should he go? You have any thoughts?
So, I mean, Yeah. So here's my first thought. My first thought is he should go to AKA, but
AKA, he's from Florida and wants to live in Florida. He should go to ATT.
bro, I understand. I just don't think that he's someone who is going to. I don't know, man. There's so much drama. There's so much drama with the welterweights at ATT. And are you telling me that Mike Perry's not going to get involved in drama?
Right, but look what ATT did for Robbie Lawler, who was somewhat Mike Perry-esque when he found his way there. They were able to hone him in and turn him into a champion. So that would be, if Mike Perry were to fulfill his potential, he'd become Robbie Lawler. Is that agreed?
No. No, that's one of the nicest things I've ever heard about Mike Perry and ever. No, I don't agree with that.
As far as a brawler...
So you think he'll be champion who defends the title? No.
What I'm saying is when Robbie Lawler came back from Strikeforce and went to ATT, no one was seeing him as a future champ.
Mm-hmm.
And ATT turned him into a dominant champ. I'm not saying Mike Perry can be a dominant champ. I'm saying the blueprint for turning a brawler, and fine-tuning him to a champion is there. So, again, not saying Mike Perry would be a champion, but to get the most out of him, I think it's got to be ATT.
Yeah, and so what I was going to say, because I know you're questioning the AKA choice as opposed to ATT, what I was really going to say is that I don't think that Mike Perry does well with powerful gyms. I think he's got
more structure in general.
Structure in general, exactly. Because if you remember when he went to Jackson Wink, I remember all the Jackson Wink guys completely took his side over Cowboys. We all know how that went. But I remember even before that fight happened, reporters were asking Perry, so, is Jackson Wink your new home? And it was clear as day that he didn't really trust Jackson Wink, even in that fight camp, in my opinion. There was something wrong from the beginning.
There's been a lot of, it seems like some underlying things he hadn't want to bring to light, but he had his original team in Florida, and then I think he was working with someone, Frank Lester, right?
I believe that's right, yeah.
At Jackson, and then I'm not sure if they had a falling out or not, but then he moved on from there. So, yeah, obviously I don't think he's going to go very far without a camp because, like I said, I think it was clear that he was rusty, not having, a proper striking coach. But who knows with Mike Perry, man?
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay, so moving on, I've got a question from our guy Jalen Ware. That's at strive2b_gr8. So strive2b, great. Love Jalen, always brings the fire. He says, with only the UFC putting together consistent fight cards during this COVID pandemic, is Paige Van Zandt making a mistake fighting out her contract, hoping to get a bigger one somewhere else? If she loses to the dangerous Rebus, how would that map out her fighting career? #AskSplitPod. And it's a great question.
Such a great question with a couple different elements there. But, I do think, there's a lot of unknowns here. Obviously, Bellator's not back. I'm sure they've made updates. I haven't been following as to when they plan on being back. I'm pretty sure PFL has announced that they're not going to be fighting in 2020.
Yep, that season's been canceled, I can confirm.
Yeah, so the free agent market is definitely not going to be what she had anticipated it being, win, lose, or draw. With the state of the world right now, things are just a little different than people had anticipated for this summer. So, yeah, I think that this could hurt her. With that said, she's Paige Van Zandt. She's on her Instagram in a bikini, 3 days a week. I'm sure she still has some earning power for other organizations. So we'll just have to see. I think she falls into that. That's, obviously the Sage Northcutt kind of profile where rushed a little too soon, too young, wanted him to be a star, didn't quite pan out. But the thing is with Paige is she can always fall back on that IG career. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And on that note, so, a lot of people are saying, and I happen to, definitely agree with this.
One thing I do want to say before you get going, though, is that she keeps saying things like, she made more money on Dancing with the Stars than she ever had in the UFC.
Yeah.
But does she not understand that without the UFC's platform, she would have never got invited to Dancing with the Stars, and nobody would have ever known who she was? So,
well, exactly, and that's what I was going to say about her Instagram complaining. I make more money off my sponsorships. Well, Paige, it's not just because you're attractive when you put on a lot of makeup and have many hours.
How many blonde chicks in bikinis are posting on their Instagrams all day that look like Paige Van Zandt that aren't fighters or don't have the public persona, but aren't obviously not making the money? So she's obviously getting paid because of the persona that goes along with being a pro fighter and being on Dancing with the Stars.
In the UFC.
Exactly, 100%.
Yep.
Because if she would have started in Bellator, those opportunities would not have come at all. So just ask Alima Leigh McFarland.
Yeah.
When is she going to get invited to Dancing with the Stars?
Yeah, exactly. Don't hold your breath, unfortunately.
Right. So I just think it's kind of ironic that she's just like kind of so outspoken versus the UFC, when it seems like the UFC has built Paige Van Zandt into a star, and Paige Van Zandt hasn't upheld her end of the bargain, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And so all I was going to say is that it's widely believed, and I believe this as well, that Paige has every intention of fighting out her contract and then joining her husband, Austin Vanderford, in Bellator. But here's the thing, and this has shown me that Paige lacks a little bit, I mean this very respectfully, but lacks a little bit of emotional EQ and a little bit of business intelligence, because any good negotiator knows that you never tell your current company exactly what your intentions are. So
you don't show your cards.
You don't show your cards. Thank you. So now, not only is the UFC aware she wants to go to Bellator, but more importantly, Bellator's aware she wants to go to Bellator. So who's going to get lowballed in an offer? I'll give you a hint. Her name rhymes with Wage Van Want.
Yeah, but with that being said, when Bellator comes back after essentially taking a whole year off, assets like Paige Van Zandt become twice as important. So she could cash in big time.
I just wouldn't have, if I was her, I would have stayed a lot more.
So I guess the answer is who knows, but it doesn't seem like a smart play.
Right. I mean, don't you think at the very least she should have at least pretended and lied that she wanted to stay with the UFC? She would have gotten a better deal.
I don't even think Paige Van Zandt's that bad of a fighter. I think she's shown quite a bit of potential, but it just got off the rails,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so moving on. This is a great question from my boy, MMA by Milliken, at MMA by Milliken. He's got a great podcast himself, guys. Check that out. And he says, what fighters can beat Francis Ngannou outside of the heavyweight division in the UFC? And no, they cannot gain weight. No DC and no John Jones can be counted. Hashtag AskSplitPod.
Tyson Fury.
Ha! In the UFC, though.
Oh, in the UFC.
My answer is simple. Nobody. Definitely. Nobody.
For sure.
Am I wrong?
That's going to be a hard one.
I mean, I can't even begin to think of if we're not counting Jones and DC. I mean, we're not counting Jones and DC. I mean, outside of heavyweight, absolutely nobody. No way.
What about Vitaly Minkov?
Oh, I forgot about him. Yeah, he'll definitely destroy Ngannou.
All right, yeah. It doesn't look good. I think
It's a very good question, Milliken. But yeah, man, I would
it really
say
goes to show and highlight kind of where Francis stands in the fighting landscape today. He's a big, terrifying monster who only less than a handful of people in the world can probably defeat.
Absolutely. Goes to show definitely how far he's come. Certainly since his loss to Stipe and Lewis, in my opinion at least. So moving on, this question comes from a good friend of mine. That's at Yugi MMA. Guys, give him a follow. He is a diehard John Jones fan, but I still love the guy, so that should say quite a lot. That's at Yugi MMA. He says, if DC beats Stipe, who do you think should fight for the title once DC retires?
We've covered that a handful of times. I really think it would end up being Stipe versus Francis.
Okay, just playing devil's advocate. You think Stipe would take a loss to DC and then
fight for a vacant belt again? Yes, because then he would have an opportunity to become a 3-time heavyweight champion, and that really would cement him. Even with a loss to DC in their trilogy, he could come back and add that 3-time champion to his resume. So I definitely could see that happening.
Okay, I mean, the only reason that I hesitate on that is I just know how much Dana despises Stipe on a personal level, and I have it.
What's more sellable, Stipe versus Francis when he's already beat Francis, or Francis versus Curtis Blades for the 3rd time? I think that's the only 2 choices at that point. So you have to go with Stipe.
No. If Lewis beats Olenek, I think Francis Lewis too. Francis Lewis too.
No, you think there's more intrigue in Lewis?
Come on, do you really think they're both good? You really think they're going to stand in front of each other? You really think they're going to stand in front of each other again? Come on.
That's an absurd take that you have there. Stipe versus Francis would be that fight 100%. 100%.
Stipe would be humiliating himself, coming off a loss and taking another title shot. That's like embarrassing.
How's that humiliating himself?
I don't know, because I just believe that Steve. By the way,
what if he comes back and beats Francis and everyone
I'm not
thinks
here to
there's
bash
no way
Stipe
like
at all.
you, and then he walks away, retires with the belt after defeating Francis Ngannou twice?
He'd still be down 2-1 to DC, and the greatest heavyweight of all time would be well decided, and it would not include Stipe Miocic.
That's not true. It wouldn't be well decided, but
I just think the winner of Stipe DC3 is the best.
Heavyweight title and beats Francis 2-0, he would still be in that discussion.
Yeah, he would still be in the discussion for sure. I think that the winner of Stipe DC3 is the greatest heavyweight of all time. But I hear what you're saying for sure.
But time moves forward, and there'll be another greatest. So we'll see.
Oh yeah, well that's very that's very true. That's very true.
It was so funny, I started watching so many years ago in the UFC, and I always bring my cousins, and it was like. It was funny one time they said every single fight card you bring me to is like the greatest of all time or the best fight of all time or the most important fight of all time, and I was like, yep, that's kind of how it is. It's like a snowball going downhill. It's every fight weekend is the best fight of all time, and every fighter is the greatest of all time.
Yeah,
just the nature of the beast, dude.
Absolutely, but again, we could talk about this for an entire episode. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's a young sport. It's only been around since 1993.
100%.
It's evolving, so that's why. It's a sport that's always evolving right now. So
Side note, I wanted to say, I mean, have there ever been in a vacuum a better 4 cards than UFC Vegas 1 through 4 in the Apex? If you put all of those fights together, I mean,
right.
They have been unbelievable.
And put UFC 250 in there. Throw 250 in there, because I remember it being fun.
So those 5 cards have just delivered, tenfold, which is crazy. It almost makes you think that the fans are unnecessary at the live events.
Yeah, I know. Well, and we talked about that.
I think it's so intimate and so, dramatic without the fans, hearing the corners, hearing the punches. I mean, when you're in the 4th round between Hooker and Poirier, you could hear those guys breathing heavy and taking shots. It was crazy.
I know, but I can't get behind it's better to have no fans. I completely understand.
It's not better, but it's certainly more like intimate and like you're there. I got a 55-inch screen and I can hear these guys breathing and beating the hell out of each other. It's like I'm standing 2 feet from them.
Oh yeah, no, there's no doubt about that. There's no doubt about that.
And think about all the corner controversies that have been brought to the light without fans, because that's so exposed.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so by the way, on that note, you're talking about how great these fights have been, and they've all been in a smaller octagon. Do you think that the smaller octagon has led to better fights? I know my answer.
100%. I mean, that goes without saying, does it not? I mean, smaller space, you have to engage more. You can't maneuver as much defensively. You can't circle away as much. You can't get on your bike as much, so it forces the action. No doubt. So
one to play devil's advocate, as I love to do, one counter argument I've heard to that is, well, it takes away some of the intricacies of the chess-like strategy that can be.
I don't think it takes away that much strategy. What strategy was missing from Hooker versus Poirier?
No, I don't think there was much. But for example, I know we know for a fact that Stipe Miocic's team has pushed back very hard with UFC 252 taking place in the Apex. They don't want to fight DC in a smaller cage.
I do think heavyweights and would have a case to be in the bigger cage, but that's all relative in my opinion.
Yeah.
They're obviously much bigger, so being in the bigger cage makes sense. But if they're in the small cage, that doesn't bother me either. I think the action has been unbelievable.
Yeah, and no, I completely agree with you. And on that note, really fast, even if Stipe, and by the way, I think that there's a great chance that Stipe has a very valid point and a very valid argument that he'd prefer a full-sized cage against DC the third time. It's the biggest fight of his life, without question. I would just say looking from it from Stipe's perspective, if I'm Stipe and I find out about this, I would be upset, I would be annoyed. But to let your complaint go public, to me, that must fill Cormier with so much confidence. So I don't know why you would do that. You're showing your lack of belief in yourself. So is that wrong? Is that a wrong take?
Right, but didn't Cormier get finished last time?
Absolutely he did. No, of course.
So if he's feeling overconfident based on, Stipe's request for the larger cage, I guess what I'm saying is I think that's a moot point. I don't think that's really playing into it. I don't think DC's overly confident because Stipe wants a small cage, considering they've fought twice already. It's 1-1. I think DC's looking at it with a level head, understanding that this could go either way. I don't think he's overconfident in any way based on, Stipe not wanting a certain size ring. This is all posturing. We see it all the time.
Yeah, and hard to disagree with that. I think there's definitely some mind games going on. Let's remember Stipe is still very upset with DC.
I think at this point, when Stipe says something like he wants the bigger cage, that gives DC a little grabs, rib him and give him a hard time and kind of take kind of that coach persona. So I think that's kind of what you see.
Yeah, which is exactly what DC did, by the way. He's like, honestly, it doesn't matter which size cage.
Confidence when it comes to the competition. I just think that's the approach he took.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree there. Okay, so coming up next is I've got a question from Steve Brule, PhD, MD, which is if you know that character, that's a joke from Tim and Eric Awesome Show. Great job from a while ago, but I appreciate it. Steve Brule, PhD, PhD, MD. I don't know why I'm having trouble saying that.
Is there a question, or are we just saying
No, I'm just talking about Steve Brule. Okay, so he says, Shabazian versus Derek Brunson breakdown, a.k.a. which round does Brunson get KO'd? And I'm going to say the third.
Yeah, seems about right. Yeah, I'm going to say the third, too. I could see a back-and-forth fight, and then obviously Shabazian's the younger guy, landing some big late.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a barn burner. I'm sure that both guys will get hit pretty quickly.
Absolutely. Okay, next question is a great one from an OG of the show, Jacob Powers, at Jacob Powers2. Always asks us great questions. He says, #AskSplitPod. What are your top 5 fights of 2020 so far? I've got my 5. Should I go first, or you want to go first? You have your 5?
Yeah, go ahead with your 5. I'll be lucky to remember all of them, but we'll see where we're at.
All right, and this is the order I've got. I'm going from number 1 to number 5, okay? Number 1, JJ versus Zhang. Number 2, Poirier versus Hooker. Number 3, Emmett versus Burgos. Number 4, Cater versus Stevens. And number 5, Jones versus Reyes.
Jones versus Reyes, huh?
That was an incredibly competitive fight that, let's be honest, Dominic Reyes definitely won.
No doubt.
You don't think it belongs in that category?
Not personally, but hey, it's your list, right?
Okay. Well, what?
Obviously, the top 3 can't be
touched. Yeah.
Disputed. I would say Justin versus Tony. I don't know if you mentioned that one. That was an exciting fight for me, even though Tony lost. It was really.
Oh yeah, that was good. It just wasn't as competitive. So the only reason
it wasn't as competitive, but Tony really showed a lot of heart, obviously, and then just the excitement of having those two in the cage together was big.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find like a creative one.
What do you think
Nobody
of
was-
Cater versus Stevens being in there?
It was good, but I mean, it didn't leave like a real overly lasting mark on me. So
I know. Well, this question was hard, I've got to think of 5 fights real fast. So, look, I'm, okay. Now you've got me really questioning my Jones-Reyes pick. I mean, I thought it was...
Well, yeah. I'm not
Well, that
feeling
was
that
extremely...
one at all.
I'm going by competitiveness. I mean, I thought Reyes won that fight.
Well, let's see. Yeah. I mean, I'm searching through my picks, my old picks, to see if I can find something that sticks out. Nothing's sticking out. So obviously, I go with those 4. The 5th one, I really don't know off the top of my head.
Fair enough.
All right, keep going.
Okay, moving on to... Oh, man, I love this question. This is one of my favorite questions ever. This is from OG Eduardo at Landa Crew. What's the biggest personal event you guys have missed in order to watch a UFC fight? Mine was my job's annual Christmas party for the Usman-Colby fight. Eduardo, good man. That was not to be missed, and you made the correct choice, and work Christmas parties are overrated.
I mean, if it's Saturday night, I miss pretty much whatever is going on, right? So, I mean... I've become notorious with my wife's family as the guy who always has like his phone down on his hip during dinner and out at restaurants and events because I got to catch all the fights. So,
yeah.
I guess I don't miss the events physically, but I'm just not there in spirit, I guess you could say. So I've missed a lot of events staring at my phone.
Yeah, okay, so, look, here's my answer. People are going to judge me a little bit, I think. So, this is... The answer is I dipped out of one of my best friend from college's wedding early. I know that sounds horrible. He was one of my closest friends in college, but you know how it is. People grow up. People grow apart a little bit. It's not like we were talking even once every month, not even close for the last 8 years. But I get invited to his wedding. Of course I go, of course. And they just wouldn't stop. It kept going on and on and on with the stupid speeches. And I had put about $1,000 on Artem Lobov to beat Paulie Malignaggi. Yes, I'm aware this is not UFC. This is bare knuckle fighting. I left my former best friend's wedding early to go see Lobov versus Paulie Malignaggi. And it's not even that bad. It gets even worse. I get home. I put on the fight. Artem is walking out to the little ring circle, whatever the heck they have, and I passed out.
You didn't even see it.
Didn't even see it. Had to wake up the next day.
But you still won your money?
I still won my money. Oh, it was one of the best horrendous hangover wake-ups ever.
Nice.
I was like,
right.
leaning over the toilet, throwing up while I'm looking at my money. It was nice. Okay.
We're so off track. What are we
TMI,
talking
TMI.
about?
But yeah, so that's the worst I did. Sorry, Cole. Oops, I shouldn't have said his name. Sorry, Cole. I ditched your wedding, homie. But people
We won $1,000.
People grow apart, and money's money. So all the best to you and the wife.
All right, I got one queued up here on Instagram from Jim Asoon, show regular.
Jim Asoon, the man, the myth, the legend.
He says, "What's next for Rose if she wins or loses at 251? #AskSplitPod." Great question, Jim. What do you think, Phil?
Well, I think if she wins, I think if she wins, she's fighting Zhang next for the title. And even, by the way, Zhang has expressed extremely strong interest in Rose. She says, in my opinion, Rose is the second best. I'd like to fight her next. So that's if she wins, I think she's getting a title shot.
Yeah, I think that's a no-brainer. She would get the next title shot. And if she loses... it's hard telling with Rose. It seems like every time she loses, she falls out of love with the sport, and it takes a year or so for her to find her love again and come back. So she's been really wishy-washy that way. So if she were to lose, depending on the way she loses, I could see her even retiring. I mean, if she loses twice to Jessica Andrade, she may just go off into the sunset. So I really don't know. Title shot with a win, I think there's a lot of unknowns if she were to lose.
There's something I can't even put into words because it's not just. It's true that I find Rose cute, but look, that is not why I'm such a big fan. Not even close. There's something about her that's just so likable. Do you know what I'm saying? What is that?
Well, yeah. Well,
what
you've
is
seen
that?
her. I mean, we grew up with her, did we not?
Yeah.
She was on The Ultimate Fighter. We've seen her fighting since she was really young. She obviously has. She had amazing, grappling submission abilities. Now she's a Trevor Whitman striking specialist. I mean, she's a great fighter. She's a great personality.
I just don't know how people can dislike, because people dislike her, and I'm like, how do you dislike Rose?
I'm not sure how you could dislike Rose Namajunas. I mean,
right?
She may not be your cup of tea, but dislike her. That's how I feel about Dustin Poirier. Hint, hint.
I don't dislike.
It's like how
I don't dislike Dustin Poirier.
Who, doesn't like puppies or doesn't get along with animals. It's like, what's your problem, man?
Just for the record, I picked Dustin to win by unanimous decision last episode, and
picking him to win, and then
I bet $100 on him to win. I also won money.
Jumping on every opportunity to call him overrated.
Listen, whoa. Okay, now you brought it up, so we have to address it. Okay, it's true that I mistakenly made a tweet saying overrated. I realized that
you have mistakenly made that tweet twice.
That tweet was literally up for 25 to 45 seconds. And I guess, I was shocked. I guess I'm a big enough deal for 50 people to screenshot it. 50 people screenshotted a tweet that was up for 45 seconds.
That's how absurd it is. That's like if someone was punching their
I
puppy
was drunk,
and
Fight Geek.
Twitter.
I was drunk and I scored the third for Hooker. What do you want to do? Execute me? Win? Okay, fine.
Well, no. The thing is nobody's mad at you for misscoring. It's that you come out with these personal attacks on people.
I had no intention of personally attacking Dustin Poirier. Oh my god.
Talking about the only reason people like him is because he's a nice guy. He's a hell of a fighter.
Of course he's a hell of a fighter. Wow, you are really trying to bury me here. Wow, all right. Come on. Of course Poirier's a hell of a fighter.
He's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday.
Of course he will be. All I meant, and I've already explained this on Twitter, so most people know what I'm saying who listen to this show, because you guys are real ones.
Yeah,
but let me explain.
I'm just dragging you for MMA Twitter. I'm just trying to
I know. I didn't do a good enough job. I needed to clarify that what I meant.
I knew you were drunk right away. So
okay, thanks, buddy. All that I meant by overrated, literally all that I meant, and I've already clarified this, is I meant he will never be lightweight champion, which you agree with. You've already agreed with me.
When you say it like that, it sounds so civil. But then when you go in and say he's the most overrated fighter ever, the only reason
the tweet was up for 25 seconds. Oh my god, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, you're right.
All right, moving on.
You're right. And by the way, I take full responsibility for tweets. This was a good wake-up call week because I had never, I don't often think about that stuff. But, someone, actually a few friends reached out and they were like, just remember, man.
Think about, making horrendous takes and posting them online?
Well, I'd had a few and thought that, it's 20 seconds. I'm just a cartoon MMA dude who's going to screenshot this one.
Hey.
And I guess the answer is everyone on MMA Twitter is going to screenshot that one in 25 seconds.
Have you ever seen someone turn fan favorite like Dustin Poirier has?
Can you stop saying that I dislike Dustin Poirier? Because that is like ridiculous libel.
Okay, let's keep.
No, but really fast. I put money on Poirier. I like Poirier. I predicted Poirier would win by unanimous decision.
Right now. Say he's your favorite fighter.
What? Huh?
Say he's your favorite fighter.
No, he's not my favorite fighter. What, do you think I'm going to bend the knee out of some kind of pressure? No, of course he's not my favorite fighter. I think he's a little boring personality-wise.
Okay.
Because he's such a nice guy.
He builds playgrounds for underprivileged children, but you find that boring. All right, I feel you.
See, this is oh my gosh. This is like cancel.
Marrying his high school sweetheart, has a beautiful child.
Oh my gosh.
What it's like to be a great father.
He's a great person and a great fighter, and when did I not say that he's a great person and a great fighter? He'll never be lightweight champion, but if he is, just for the record, really quick, people, they're rolling their eyes. I've put some skin in the game here. If Poirier wins the lightweight belt, which, by the way, he easily could. He's still very young. Khabib's not going to be around much longer. If Poirier becomes lightweight champ, I want everyone to know, I am changing my cover background photo for 1 year. That's 12 full months to a picture of Poirier with the belt, and then the text above that saying, Phil the MMA dude was wrong and is an idiot. For 1 year.
I think you should have to change your name formally to Dustin.
No, I've gone far. I think the cover photo for a year thing's far enough. No?
I don't think anyone cares about that. You should change your name.
I'm not changing your name.
Okay.
Especially because especially because I have a lot of respect for Dustin Poirier. Think he's probably the mentally toughest fighter on the roster, and think he could become lightweight champion. I just happen to think he won't, but I could easily be wrong.
Well, all right. Understood. You got anything else?
Yeah. Okay, so this is from MMA Idiot, who is really underrated. I mean, this guy's a great account. Follow him, guys. That's MMA EEJIT. He says, this is a great question. Does Dana survive the cancel culture era? In my opinion, karma is a motherfucker. So something will lead to his downfall eventually, whether it be a year's time or 10 years' time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really. Dana's like the Teflon Don of the cancel culture. I don't see anybody taking out Dana. I mean, Dana works in his own industry. I mean, how many other people do what Dana does? Like literally zero. So
that's the thing. That's the thing. My first thought is I don't know that he gets taken down because they would need to catch him doing something pretty big. I mean, he's already said a lot of stuff.
I mean, outside of him like betting on fights or like rigging fights, how could you possibly get rid of him?
If he's caught on tape using a racial slur. Not that I'm saying he would ever do that, to be clear.
Well, what I'm saying is he's been wildly successful since he's been with the UFC. There'd be no reason to remove him.
He's a billionaire.
Yeah, exactly. And the UFC at this point is still operating when most sporting leagues are not, or sports promotions are not. So Dana's winning right now. I mean, I don't know what necessary karma you're talking about, if you're talking about fighter pay or not just necessarily not liking the guy, but I mean, he seems to do his job pretty damn good.
Yeah, I agree. I think it'll be interesting. I think it's a very, very good question, MMA Idiot. And I think I'm pronouncing your handle right, so tell me if I'm not, man, because big respect to you. But, I agree. I think Dana's going to survive cancel culture, believe it or not, but, we could definitely be wrong.
I think kind of. I mean, I've been following Dana for so long now that it's, nothing he does really, like, affects me too much. But I mean,
no, of course, but cancel culture's gotten much more intense, is what I'm saying.
Right, but does cancel culture care about Dana White in the UFC? I mean, we're still very under the radar in certain aspects. I mean, this is the first year they're actually on ESPN, so they're just getting introduced to that mainstream cancel culture. The UFC has been such like a niche culture for so long. Like you said, it's so new that only our own have had input, to where I still think it's kind of like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I've got a question from another extremely loyal OG, one of my favorite dudes on MMA Twitter, at DeanDog3. That's at Dean DAWG3. Love this guy. He says, will Cejudo return to 135 once there's a new champ? And how many times will the belt change hands in the next year? Peace. Always, guys. #AskSplitPod. What a great two-part question there. Yeah.
I do think Cejudo will come back eventually. I think it'll be, I don't know why, I just think it'll be around the time TJ Dillashaw surfaces. And I say the belt changes hands twice in the next year.
Ready? I think the belt changes hands 3 times in the next year. A lot.
I don't think that's good for the division, though, is it?
No, it's definitely not good. I'm just predicting. So here's where I've got it going. I've got, look, Aldo Jan is a great fight. I don't even want to get into picking that winner yet because that's for next week's show, oh my gosh, I'm so pumped for UFC 251. Aldo Jan, but the winner of Aldo Jan is going to face Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling, in my opinion, will easily defeat either Aldo or Jan. It doesn't matter. Sterling will win that. Belt changes hands. And then I believe that, and I'm not happy about this, although I think you will be. I think TJ Dillashaw is then going to defeat whoever is the current champ at that point, whether it be Sterling, Jan, or Aldo.
Okay, I could see that happening. Cool.
Yeah. All
I
right.
got another one queued up here from Larry at Larmule61.
Larmule 61, what up?
He
Larry.
says, late question. Do you think Dustin would have been KO'd if Hooker had more time to finish his barrage in the end of the second round?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, didn't even Dustin admitted that, I believe.
Well, I mean, you could clearly see on Dustin's face that he was in big trouble, and when he survived that, he even kind of gave like a smirk, like, I'm still here, but barely. You know what I mean? So he knows he was in big trouble. So I would say, yeah, that's probably what would have happened.
Yeah, I believe even in the post-fight presser, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, I think Dustin admitted that he was almost out on his feet at the end of that second.
Yeah, I definitely think he admitted like flashing out and not remembering where he was, which is the number one sign that you've been hit pretty hard.
Yeah, and by the way, again, Dustin is, in my opinion, the only person that I could even think of being mentally tougher than him is Tony Ferguson. But frankly, I mean,
Michael Bisping, come on.
Yeah, Bisping. Well, Bisping's retired, so I can't count him. I think of Tony and Dustin as the two mentally strongest. But if there's a reason, if people are kind of wondering, Phil, why are you always questioning Dustin? Why are you always not believing in Dustin? Well, look, it's because of those moments like that end of the second round. He often gets rocked. He got rocked badly in the Holloway fight that he went on to win. So that stuff makes me a little nervous. But on the other hand, he pushes through and he wins. So
can we throw Joanna in that conversation too? I mean, she was fighting on with a deformed head.
Oh, absolutely. Joanna is one of she's maybe the toughest woman in the world.
Exactly, 100%. Yeah. So yeah, definitely on that level as well.
Yeah, okay. Moving on. This is from Nathan. That's at Somerset NY, at SOMERSETNY. He says, #AskSplitPod, which division is the most exciting right now? And I've got an answer for sure, but why don't you go first?
Yeah, I mean, I think it has to be 145.
Dang it! Yes,
155 and 135 are right there. I mean, from bantamweight to lightweight, I mean, you just cannot go wrong, in my opinion. I love those weight classes.
And honestly, in a weird way, man, I think welterweight's heating up. Like Usman.
It is, but there's a lot of stagnant fighters. It's not busy enough.
That's true, but I'm just looking at it from the point.
In 2020, we've already seen Conor versus, or I guess that was 170, but we've seen Gaethje versus Tony, and now we've seen Hooker versus Poirier. I mean,
well, that's lightweight. That's not welterweight, though.
Well, what I'm saying, yeah, that's a great division. That's a better division than welterweight's. What I'm pointing out.
Oh, yes. I would agree.
You don't have 2 fights like that already this year.
No, I would agree. I just know that we went from recently, at least I should say, I went from recently feeling that there's no one who could possibly beat Kamaru except for maybe Colby in a rematch, maybe, to, Burns seems like, that fight is going to be amazing.
It's going to be amazing, but again, Kamaru could win that fight.
Of course he could. Of course he could. But I'm just saying, that's why I'm saying that welterweight is suddenly feels fun again, There's now all these new factors.
We need to get a couple more of those guys in the cage, though, because it doesn't feel like any of them are fighting.
Yeah.
That's the problem for me. So it's hard to get excited about welterweight when one of the most exciting welterweights in the world, Jorge Masvidal, is on ESPN twice a week complaining about his pay. I don't think he's going to fight anytime soon, so that kind of dampens the division, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's fair. That is fair. Hard to argue with that. And
so if I had to nail one down, I'd say featherweight right now.
Yeah, and it's hard to disagree there. I mean, just look, guys. Just look. I mean, look. We've obviously got Aldo versus Jan for the belt. After that, it's a crime that Aljamain Sterling isn't even in that title fight. He absolutely should be.
That's bantamweight. That's not featherweight.
Oh, thank you for catching me. I thought we were talking about bantamweight, featherweight, and lightweight all three being great.
Yeah. Oh, they are. Yeah. For
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you're right. Featherweight. Okay, let's talk about featherweight.
I mean,
obviously,
the depth of the featherweight division is unmatched right now. I think that's
Holloway.
Right?
Yeah. I mean, Holloway, Volkanovski, the champion, obviously. Korean Zombie, Yair.
And Holloway's got new hair. I mean, this cannot be accounted for or quantified. What do you think?
I'll be honest, I'd like to see a little bit less Twitch streaming and a little bit more training, but look, I think we'll talk about that fight next week, but Holloway Volk 2, let me just put it this way. I know that before I was saying, Holloway has no chance, and I'm sorry, guys, but I hate to break it to you. I don't see his path to winning. I recently rewatched Holloway Volk 1, and the fight was closer than I remembered it. There's a strong argument.
I've been telling you.
I know. You have been telling me that. Credit to you. There's a strong argument that Holloway won 2 rounds. Very strong.
No doubt.
So I actually scored it at the time, 4 rounds to 1 Volk. But rewatching it, I scored it 3 rounds to 2. So I think it's going to be really interesting.
And if Max has more urgency based on the fact that he lost last time, I think that he can easily win another round.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. I've said this before. 251 is getting slept on by the cash. 251 to me is such a sexy card, so good. So
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So moving on to I believe our final question. This is a voice question from Smokey J MMA, and here it is.
Hey there, Fight Geek and Phil the MMA dude from the Split Decision podcast. It's fucking Smokey J here from Australia. Just a quick and easy one for you guys this week. I just want to know if you guys think that fucking Jose Aldo will defend his belt if he wins it, or if he'll retire having that feather in his cap. That's all. Bye.
Smokey J, you're the man. I love Smokey. Don't you love how he I love everything about Smokey J. I love his wording. Thanks. Bye. I don't know. Smokey J, you're the man. I don't think that made any sense.
Man, for sure. I just don't see Aldo as the type to walk away. If he were to win that belt as a long-reigning champion, I think he would give it a go and defend it. I think he's kind of that old guard where he would kind of do the honorable thing and defend it. He always did in the past. So, yeah, I don't think he would retire with a win, personally.
I agree. I think that if Aldo wins that, he's going to continue.
And the fact that even though he's 100 in fighting years, he's still 33 or 34. So
yeah. Can you imagine, by the way, if he misses weight?
Could you imagine if he defended the belt 5 times in that division?
Oh my gosh. What if he misses weight but then beats Jan? Oh.
Why would he miss weight? He made weight perfectly last time.
He did, but it looks like a tough cut. It's always a possibility. Maybe not. Okay, maybe
that poison.
Yeah, you're right. Okay, man. So, are there any other questions?
I don't think so.
All right. Thanks, guys. Fight Geek, take us away, baby.
All right, guys. As usual, you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Google Play, Stitcher, and more. I'm at the Fight Geek MMA. He's at Phil the MMA dude. We're at Split_podcast. 4 words. The Split Decision Podcast. Thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you next week. Peace.
Peace.